What is up, Earthnoids and Space Noids? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode we are beginning our coverage of Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway Volume 2. Last volume, Hathaway, Gigi, and Kenneth were a part of the Houndsdon flight that was hijacked, during which Gigi found out that Hathaway was Mafty. Hathaway was able to acquire the new Kasai Gundam and get the upper hand on Penelope. This time, Hathaway and Mafty will head out towards Oenbelli. Once they get to Oenbelli, they will find something they don't like. So let's get into this. Gigi is in the cottage that Kenneth set up for her. She thinks about Hathaway. Being a person who sells her body to older men, the youthful energy of Hathaway and Kenneth invigorates her. We starting out like this? Already? Hold on, let me take my pants off. One of the maids brings Gigi some food. She is spending the evening alone. She chose to stay at the cottage instead of a hotel because she knew this would be further away from the base. Since the rise in temperatures, people started moving into colonies. People close to the equator were some of the first to move. Of course, some stayed for nature preservation reasons. But over time, these areas, including Davao, became a tourist destination, which means an increase in Spacenoid illegal immigration to Earth and a rise in anti-Federation activism. EFF created a force to find Spacenoids and send them back into space, usually in some mining colony, or placed into indentured servitude. These became known as the Manhunters. Of course, EFF was smart to keep them smaller in numbers as to not create another Titans. The rich elites and EFF dignitaries saw the Manhunters as a benefit to them. The oligarchy and Universal Century is slowly reaching for more and more power, and they are getting it. Gigi is certain that Hathaway will be meeting up with the Oenbelli forces. She is also certain Hathaway is this wannabe Gundam she overheard Kenneth's team talking about. Mafty is on the Valiant. We never talked about the Valiant last volume, but the Valiant is a high-density ore carrier. Inside of the ship is converted to be Mafty's command center. It can store the Gundam along with Messers and Galcazons. Nothing more is known about this boat, but we can assume it has an array of sensors and is capable of conducting recon. Laying low seems to be the motto of Mafty, and this ship is no different. A shirtless Sharchai Coleman and Joseph Seedy is trying to make contact with Oenbelli. They just assume their comms are currently down. Davao, Guangzhou, and Hong Kong all have an increase in radio chatter. It was almost time for them to move out. He is handed radio transcriptions from Guangzhou about police and military forces gathering. Hathaway looks up to see 6 mobile suits. He meets with Karaya. She isn't all too happy that they are heading out to Oenbelli, as they are still a very small force. She wants to know what happened between him and Gigi. He tells her the same response he gave in his report, but she and no other Mafty member seems to be buying it. She finds him to be immature. He wanted to tell her that he has intense feelings that goes beyond the opposite sex. This is a new type connection, and one that new types find hard to explain. Instead, he decides to be blunt and rude and tells her to leave him alone to do his work. She turns around and walks away towards the bow of the ship. Hathaway mentions that she cut her hair terribly short, which is due to her last-minute decision-making skills. Wait, in Volume 1 you said that her hair was short, but you would never confuse her for a man. Which one is it, Tamino? Which one is it? Hathaway thinks about Char's rebellion and the death of Quest once again. He constantly spirals and puts himself in these states of despair. He reflects on the fact that it is because of his dad that he is able to come to Earth as a biological observer. Nepotism is the name of the game these days. He says that Earth is a perpetual breeding ground for endless exceptions, which is a great line. I'm stealing it. He is self-aware that he is feeding off the problems he is trying to solve. Hathaway grew up in Hong Kong. He was living all alone, studying to become a biological observer. I assume Mirai and Shaman have moved to Londinian by this time. During this era, he met Karaya. She even lived with him. They could never get married, however, because she is a filthy, undocumented Spacenoid immigrant. Then he learned of the person calling himself Quacksalver through his professor. Quacksalver was previously a general in the Federation. He originally regretted that Hathaway's dad worked for EFF still. He learned a lot about the Earth from Quacksalver, things that they never tell you in the colonies. EFF's privileged class makes up 68% of all citizens on Earth, as EFF simultaneously deports hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants per year. Quacksalver reinvigorated Hathaway's desire to be a pilot once again. Hathaway and Karaya were eventually going to elope, but Hathaway became a central figure to Mafty, and the two eventually split up. Now Karaya helps out occasionally with Mafty's needs. Also with the Valiant is the Sealac, which is a similar ship converted for combat use. The captain of the Valiant is Brink's Wedge. Galcazons are good to go on the Sealac. In Mafty, rank and duty are one and the same. This could be a good or a bad thing. Sometimes rank and leadership plays a vital role. They should be in Oenbelli by sundown. Even though the Oenbelli forces aren't officially Mafty, they are too big to ignore. The Messers and Galsazons launch. Hathaway is waiting for Julia Suga, the mechanic, to finish her repairs. She is essentially flaunting her boobs in Hathaway's face. She is super fit because Hathaway is constantly commenting on her lean body as she moves around in the cockpit. Tomino, you horny dog, you. She is against helping Oenbelli, but they can't afford to wait for them to attack, and they need to strike first. He focuses his mind on her nipples before telling her to put on a shirt. How are they going to handle this scene in the movie? He gets into the Gundam and dives underwater. This is the first time Hathaway has been underwater in a mobile suit. He submerges to test the Gundam. Julia and her team work non-stop since the Gundam came into Mafty's possession. The seawater makes the machine a little sluggish. The engineers need to step up their hydrodynamic skills. He is 300 meters underwater. Hathaway makes a subtle comment that man is able to conquer space easier than conquering the oceans. Meaning in Universal Century, much of the depths of the oceans are still a mystery. It's easier to free the soul from gravity than to conquer it. It thrusts out of the ocean where he meets up with the Galsazons. Karaya looks up and thinks this is a mission where Hath may not come back. She calls him Hath. She goes onto the bridge where there is a silence. They establish radio communication once again to see things aren't looking good for the team heading into battle. Karaya wants to be put on an away mission. The two ships are moving to their next support point. She runs into Julia and says, "Bitch, put your tits away." She admits that she says this out of jealousy. Due to Minovsky particle dispersion, they have rendezvous points where they can resupply. This was necessary due to their lack of manpower. Many people rely on scanners and sensors, but they forget how to do basic intelligence gathering in the real world. Karaya thinks about a war in Vietnam before Universal Century. The side with the fancy weapons didn't in fact win the guerrillas, similar to the Vietnam War of our time. This is how Mafty operates in many ways. The dangers of modern times lie in the systems that support such convenience. Man has become less imaginative as technology evolves. As they pass the Bizarre Islands, the two boats split off, heading to separate rendezvous points. Hathaway believes that he will never see good game again. Their altitude is 150 meters as they pass by the islands and head through the swamplands and into Oenbelli. If the Kimberly forces are expecting them, they will use the Oenbelli Mountains as a shield. Are they expecting them, though? They descend and prepare for combat. Kasai Gundam gets out and takes the lead. Now this is great. If you are like me, I look up all the locations to see if they are real or made up in Universal Century. Oenbelli doesn't exist, but Oenbelli is a real place in Australia. Hathaway mentions that in the old century, when the Federation government was establishing global immigration policies, they wrote down Oenbelli instead of Oenbelli, and it has forever been named Oenbelli. This is hilarious and a great representation of the bureaucratic nightmare that is EFF. They start seeing smoke as they descend. They can't get a visual on the city, but they note that there are bogies in the area. It is the Kimberly forces. Kasai fires off some missiles as the Galsazons and Messers fly behind the mountains for cover. There is nothing but fire and smoke. Is this what's left of Oenbelli? The Gundam activates a sand barrel barrier, which wasn't explained during the Gundam breakdown, but they are particles that deploy around the Gundam and function as anti-missile defenses. He takes some video footage and meets up with Raymond Kane and Gauman on the Galsazon 1. He lets them know that Oenbelli forces are all but wiped out. They have to leave now. They examine the recorded footage to see hundreds of dead bodies. They wonder if Kimberly is panicking because of Kenneth. Emeralda shows the team the printouts. Hendrix Hio thinks that they are in Jabiru waiting for them. Jabiru is 57 kilometers south of Oenbelli. Rod Hine, a pilot of Messer 7, took some photos to show that Oenbelli had decent forces. Messer Pilot 6 Harlem Morley says that there is a tent city on the outskirts of town, which was also wiped out. This is what the Valiant bridge crew were looking at when radars came back up. They noticed that there are 10 mobile suits not far out and plan to take action even though it is still nighttime. The pilots were ready for a fight anyways. However, this intel gathering cost them about 10 minutes. Who knows how many more people will die while they travel south. They all head out. As they pass by the mountain range, they notice there are actually 12 Gustav Karls from the Kimberly forces heading their way. 6 of them go directly for the Gundam. This is no problem as the Gundam tears through 6 with ease, causing the remaining 6 to retreat. As they retreat, Hathaway picks off 1, and the Messer takes down 2. So only 3 were able to escape without their Kasarias. No self-light system means they have to boost jump all the way back to base. Sucks to be them. The team continues to push south through Oenbelli. Gigi gets a call from Kenneth from the cottage. She informs Kenneth that she wants to head to Hong Kong tomorrow and wonders if there is a plane available. She wants to see how this plays out, but she also has to handle things for the Count. Kenneth says that he will have his C-38 ready for tomorrow. At first I thought this was a C-38 Courier used by the Navy, but this was deployed in 1997, and this was written in the late 80s and early 90s. So I assume this should be a C-88, and it was an editorial issue. C-88 is the updated Medea first seen in War in the Pocket. She asks him to come over, but he is busy dealing with Federation ministers for the Federation meeting in Adelaide. Gigi comments that he should have time since there have been so many people coming and going from the base. Kenneth's tone changes and he starts questioning Gigi. He wonders if she is keeping track of him. She wonders why she would do that, and Kenneth bluntly says, for Hathaway. This was a tactic to see how she would react. But she says, dude, I can see the cottage from the base. However, this contradicts what she said last time about strategically being far away from the base to avoid being watched. He says that he can't have fun tonight, but he will pick her up tomorrow. Gigi says that he is welcome to dream about her if he likes. Oh yeah, a woman giving a man a compliment. He could live off of that for years. Heh, gross. Mafty goes south where they find even more of a massacre. Esmeralda and 2 other female crewmates are horrified at a female prisoner who isn't divulging any information. They don't really describe the woman, just the reaction to people looking at her. So we could probably assume dismemberment of some sort. Another person being held as a prisoner is Captain Kimberly Heyman, the commander of the original Kimberly unit. He is acting tough around the Mafty forces. Galman wonders if they should resort to torture. Hathaway says he would leave it to the Oenbelli forces if that were the case. He tells Kimberly that the Oenbelli forces have nothing to do with Mafty. He says that the consequences will catch up with him. The former commander pleads for his life and says that they hacked up bodies. So we did the same essentially. Hathaway just sees a child in front of him with command tactics fueled by emotional reaction. Hathaway suggests that they treat their captives with the utmost care. Galman thinks that because they aren't a part of the Cersei unit, they won't provide any value to them and wants to kill them. But Hathaway thinks that if they provide a fraction of value, then it is worth keeping them alive. They head down the corridor to another room to find Fabio Rivera. He had a thick Spanish accent. He realizes that this is the man that was pretending to be Mafty. They found a gap in the Federation and exploited it by creating a local air force in the area. Hathaway tells him that real leaders don't hide behind false identities. What they experienced here in Oenbelli is a slaughter. He needs to take accountability for what has happened here. He shrugs off Hathaway's comments. Fabio mentions that his people recorded a video of the massacre that occurred here in Oenbelli. Someone is on their way to space to expose the Federation to the colonies. One of Fabio's subordinates speaks up and tells Mafty that Kimberly's forces were playing with them in their mobile suits. They were enjoying killing their forces. Another person makes fun of them and says they are no different than Kimberly. Galman gets mad, but Hathaway pulls him out of the room for a moment. Hathaway says that what Quacksalver used to fear was that emotions run high when making important decisions. Hathaway makes the call to pull out. Oenbelli forces have roughly 5,000 forces remaining throughout Oenbelli. Last episode we learned they had 20,000. Ouch, 75% loss is rough. Remember, these were the people responsible for the Houndsend hijacking. They wonder what Mafty's next move is. All he says is that they will simply eliminate Federation cabinet members. Fabio tells him that they plan on hitching a ride to Guangzhou, as they believe the Federation meeting is moving from Adelaide to this new location in China. They said that they intercepted a message from Hundley Yokson of the criminal police organization that suggests they are moving. This message was intercepted while they were on the Houndsend. Hathaway believes that the Federation are old cronies who wouldn't even be bothered to change location. Fabio scoffs at him and says now who is being sloppy. Mafty makes their leave from Oenbelli. Kenneth makes his way to the cottage to pick up Gigi. He tells her that they missed their chance to get Mafty and Oenbelli yesterday. He wonders why he, a 30-something-year-old, is interested in a 19-year-old girl. He realizes that someone like Mace Flowers, the flight attendant on the Houndsend, is probably more his style, and probably more age-appropriate. He is going to try to give her a call when he gets the time. I'm going to ignore Kenneth's thoughts of defiling Gigi during the drive. I need a break from calling Tomino a horny dog. You horny dog. He finds Gigi to be an enigma. He tells her that men can think very unilaterally, so her intuition is very intriguing to him. She can't explain something that is simply intuitive to her. She asks if he could give her Hathaway's address. Of course, he already promised Hathaway he would do so. The two talk about the differences between new types and old types as Kenneth starts to realize that she may be a new type. He mentions that old types are impatient and they try to rush human progress. Gigi says even Mafty. For a moment, Kenneth wonders if Hathaway could be Mafty, but he brushes it off real quick. They arrive at the base and Gigi gets onto a cargo plane, so probably a C-88. There are other cabinet members on board as well. She overhears two of the men talking. She hears the words, Adelaide. Gigi makes it to Hong Kong. The ensign who drops her off suggests tipping the driver so they don't try to rob her. He mentions that this is because of the Federation crackdown in this area. This is an important comment because this area was previously an autonomous area where the Federation wasn't allowed to have any presence. Since the attack by the Psycho Gundam decades earlier, it appears the Federation has slowly been encroaching on the area. The ensign sends her off and heads back to the base where he plans on picking up 2 ministers and Mace Flowers. She is planning on hosting the ministers on their journey to the meeting. And by planning, I mean Kenneth probably gave her a job just so he could try to have sex with her. And he does, which we'll talk about next episode. Gigi notes that this city is almost as clean as the colonies. She arrives to her apartment. The concierge escorts her through the property, during which she mentions something fascinating. She says that throughout the old century and through universal century, globalism is at an all-time high, and thus more and more multicultural families are being created. Over time, culture became homogenous, and soon many cultures and ethnicities were slowly disappearing. Now people try to preserve what little culture is left. It isn't said out loud, but I assume culture is, let's just say, influenced by the Federation. Culture typically grows naturally or out of necessity. Later that night, she was already at work ordering furniture and wallpapers, getting the place ready for the Count. She later gets naked and takes a bath, while thinking of that one time Hathaway saw her naked. This calms her down and allows her to get a good night's sleep. Tomino, this is crossing male fantasy territory. Just wait till we get to the original Gundam novel. That is when we see Tomino at full cringe. Mafty makes their way back to the Valiant. Hathaway finds out that Karaya and Julia are heading to Darwin. He mentions that he felt a relief that she was gone, and then felt bad that he felt that way. He says he has a lot of growing to do. He wants to set aside these human needs. But for some reason he can't get Gigi off his mind like he can Karaya. She was sent out to scout the area before the Federation meeting. Darwin and Adelaide are literally on opposite sides of Australia. Minovsky particle dispersion over Guangzhou, Hong Kong, and Davao leads some suspicion of change, and they are certain Fabio's unit will be moving towards Guangzhou. But they have intel to suggest that things are still going down in Adelaide. At that same time in Hong Kong, Gigi wakes up and decides to call Hathaway. She heads out to the streets to find a payphone. She suspects that Kenneth may have tapped her phone. Payphones in the future. How quaint. She calls and asks for Hathaway, but the person on the other line says that he is currently away. She asks if this is Amada Manson. She tells him that she is Gigi and to pass on this message to Hathaway. She says, ask him if we could have our next date in Adelaide. He is somewhat confused, but he tells her that he has to wait until Hathaway contacts him. Gigi mentions to Amada to hurry or she may go running off to Kenneth. As she heads back to her apartment, she sees the news showing a mass killing in Davao done by the Manhunters and the Circe unit. She heads back and spends the next day finishing the furnishings, but she recognizes this simply isn't right. She constantly had Kenneth and Hathaway on her mind. She decides her fate is set. She has to leave the Count. She leaves a note for the Count and takes the small bag and departs from the apartment forever. She mentions that she may be walking into her own demise. The Valiant is heading towards Banao Harbor, near Darwin's coast. They don't plan on making contact with Karaya until they are able to properly hide the ship off the coast. Hathaway asks if they received any messages from the professor. He is informed that Gigi, in fact, sent a message suggesting that the meeting is taking place in Adelaide. This moment, I think, is supposed to confirm that Hathaway was right about Adelaide, but it comes off like he is getting way too turned on around Sharchai Coleman and his men. Workplace erections. They get word that Fabio may actually be heading towards Australia. Mafty resupplies at Banao Harbor. They relay a message back to Ladoichia. They must be careful about Alice Springs during their journey. They might be able to get the jump on the Circe unit, but they also don't have too many units to work with, so they have to be careful. Hathaway says that they must make it to Adelaide or face defeat. When asked what's the reward, he says nothing but satisfaction that we did our best. So just like most American jobs. Lane aim is securing Penelope onto Casaria. He is disgusted by the sight of a woman. Kenneth brought Gigi onto the base against protocol. He grabs one of the mechanic's binoculars to get a closer look at Gigi. He mentions that he finds the other girl, Mace Flowers, to be hotter. This means that Mace went out with Kenneth. This is totally Kenneth's move with the ladies, isn't it? Hey, check out my base and some mobile suits. The Circe unit heads towards Australia. As Kenneth is preparing defenses for the Adelaide conference with Chief Police Officer Hundley Yokesum, Gigi just randomly makes her appearance at the base. Kenneth wasn't expecting her to just show up. Mace Flowers is also making her way to their location with some Federation ministers. They head to his office. He is feeling worn down by everything going on. He is heading to Adelaide soon, so she says she will stay at Hathaway's place in Monado for now. After seeing the attacks on Davao in the news by the Manhunters, she doesn't feel safe there. While in the office, a secretary walks in and is silent and confused. Behind her comes in Mace Flowers. Mace and Gigi talk while Kenneth handles business. The two passively aggressively jab at one another. Gigi tells Mace that she is Kenneth's good luck charm, as she could sense that Mace and Kenneth had sex. She just outright asks if he is good in bed. This causes Mace to slap Gigi. No one saw the slap, but everyone heard it. She gets up and says she is heading back to Hong Kong. Kenneth comes in and asks what happened, but he knows. He knows. Gigi tells him that now's not the time for someone like her, as she is a drain to his energy. Definitely not Genki at all. She says that Kenneth can touch her butt and breasts if she likes. Okay, things are getting Genki again. As she is the Cersei team's good luck charm, he tends to agree with her, as he has been stressed lately. Also, don't forget about the butt and the boob thing she just said. Kenneth will take Gigi along as he heads south for Adelaide. They head out on a carrier. The cabinet members that are now on board with the two sit in awkward silence as Kenneth is now with Gigi instead of Mace, who they came with from Hong Kong. Kenneth asks her what she thinks of the operation, this flight, and everything in the upcoming future. Gigi believes that things will go well, and they may even be able to capture something from Mafty. She then pauses and says, "Never mind, you won't capture something. It will sink into the waters." She eventually passes out. Later, Kenneth wakes up once they get close to Australia and informs her that her luck came in handy once again. Thanks to Penelope, they were able to take down one of Mafty's ships. This is the Valiant. Gigi never considered that Hathaway may be on board. Kenneth introduces her to the rest of the team and is officially recognized by the Cersei unit. 3 hours earlier, the Valiant is moving through Benoi Harbor. The Valiant has an intricate camouflage system that doesn't work with the area's environment. Karaya and Julia went ahead to contact support forces and should be expecting them. The Minovsky craft system on the Psy Gundam comes in handy as the terrain is in marshy wetlands. This resupply mission involves them moving into Australia as forces, including the Oenbelli forces, make the retreat. They will try to help those in need as they make their escape. During this supply mission, they run into Fabio and his compatriots, Cheng-Hei and Federico. Hathaway grins and says, "So, not Guangzhou, huh?" It seems that their intel was wrong about the changing of the meeting place after calling Hathaway sloppy, so Hathaway jabs back at him. They ask for help with an immediate attack on Darwin, which Hathaway wasn't expecting. Fabio believes that if they attack Darwin, it will make EFF think that Mafty forces are heading to Guangzhou, giving them time to continue with the resupply in Australia. They lend Riddick's Galsazon to help out with Cheng-Hei, Fabio, and his men. He officially makes the Oenbelli forces a part of Mafty. He wonders if they could keep him in line. Hathaway meets with Julia Suga, whose nipples are erect under her shirt. Tomino's words, not mine. You horny dog. He asks her to take care of Karaya, as he won't be able to see her for a while. Julia mentions that after the mission, he should be easier on her. His Mafty personality can be tough on her. Riddick moves out with Chang. After their mission, they are to meet up with Fabio in Adelaide. Hathaway and Masam head to Darwin in the Psy Gundam. 3 men act as Karaya's proxy as she is not currently there. The informer of the carriers that recently arrived at the Darwin airport. They seem to be friends with the Oenbelli forces. There is a huge increase in the electronic components coming into Australia, unlike Torrington area, which is devastated by the colony drop. Northern Australia seems to not need more power, so he wonders what this could mean. Masam and Hathaway get into the Gundam and take off. The passage of time in this chapter is awkward and it jumps around, but this all takes place before daybreak. Shortly around this time, the Valiant is sunk. Hathaway won't know about this until he makes it to Ayers Rock. Hathaway is starting to realize that he made a mistake not bringing in Fabio and the Oenbelli forces earlier. If Federico and his men attack the airport earlier, Kenneth and Gigi may not be alive. They disembark and Kenneth instantly gets to work shipping ministers to Adelaide. Gigi says she has a bad feeling about this place. This causes Kenneth to get everyone back into the air faster. Gigi once again comes in handy as a good luck charm. They make their leave from Darwin. Once they are far out of sight, the Federico team begins their attack. The Darwin forces just broadcast the message, Mafty's Oenbelli forces. Federico's team flees in a civilian plane from the base. Meanwhile, Karaya makes her way north to a small civilian airport outside of Darwin. Kenneth and EFF believes that it is the Oenbelli forces merely stealing planes on their way to Guangzhou. They took the bait. The team is starting to believe that Gigi is the goddess of the Cersei unit. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. The morale boost of his men justifies Gigi being here. We've seen this with Amado at the end of the war as well. He motivates the white base crew claiming to be a new type savior, but new types don't have that power. It was just to help the white base crew as they went into battle at Abawaku. Somewhere in Australia, Hathaway is fighting with Gustav Karls. Everyone is split up making their way to Adelaide. But why is this summit so important for Mafty? At the summit, the Federation will attempt to ratify a special bill on the return to Earth. The Federation certainly has the power on who can and can't come to the planet, but it was never officially ratified into law. This special bill actually codifies it and gives them full authority. No longer is it an unspoken rule. Manhunters are now legally sanctioned. But when a few elites have the power, it creates a bureaucratic dictatorship, when those in charge give the power to their nepo babies. This is one reason why Mafty kills cabinet members. If the Federation wants to pass on power via bloodlines, then they will simply cut off the bloodline. Every once in a while, something comes along and uproots human consciousness. Char's rebellion was one of these moments. As Hathaway makes it to his next relay point, the ministers make it to Adelaide. The city only has 10,000 residents, but it slowly became Federation-controlled. One of Fabio's subordinates finally made it to Side 1 and provided SBTFV Londinian with the footage on the Oenbelli massacre. The news soon traveled to Earth, where many of the cabinet members saw Yoksum and Kimberly's men stopping Fabio's forces, using cruel and unusual methods. They demand Yoksum to tell them what the meaning of this is, but Yoksum and the police are spinning this as fake news. He and Gas Hugest head to the Plaza Hotel to speak with the Deputy Chief of Staff. Gas is currently acting as a liaison between Kenneth's Cersei unit and the Manhunters in Davao. They realize that Kenneth and his Cersei unit's performance was handled very poorly in Oenbelli. They need to get into contact with the 13th Autonomous Unit. They need to get in contact with Bright Noah. Masam and Hathaway notice wildfires breaking out as they make their way to Ayers Rock. Chan and the 30 of Fabio's men are also heading in that direction. They go to investigate the fires as something seems off. Tomino goes into detail about the Minowski Cross system blowing the flames of the fire beneath the Kasai Gundam, but earlier Kasai was used in the marshlands because it wouldn't apply physics to the environment. This is a reminder that even Tomino is inconsistent. They find that the fire was most likely created by Rod Heinz Messer or Hendrix Hio's Galsazon. They finally make it to Ayers Rock and meet up with his comrades. Hendrix and the Galsazon are okay. Rod, however, was killed in action. Hathaway also learns that the Valiant was sunk. Wedge, Morley, and Rod are dead. He mentions that the good ones go first. Chang tells Hathaway Fabio's men have made it and are all resting. Chang has lost old allies and gained new ones. He feels a danger looming over Mafty. Hathaway catches his breath and takes a sip of coffee before Hendrix debriefs him and dumps more bad news onto his shoulders. Hendrix tells him how his comrades died by the hands of the Cersei unit, but interestingly, they only took out the Messers. They didn't pursue the Galsazons. Hathaway realizes that the Cersei unit is picking them off slowly and methodically. It is a war of attrition, and Mafty is on the losing side. He tells Hendrix to take his meds. If meds are brought up in Gundam, I always assume cyber-new type enhancements, but it could just be some Vicodin or benzos to make the bad thoughts go away. This chapter ends with Hathaway thinking of Gigi and getting horny. 350 kilometers from Ayers Rock is Alice Springs. This is now the headquarters of the criminal police organization and the Manhunters. Kenneth's carrier lands in Alice Springs to pick up some Manhunters on the way to Adelaide. The Cersei unit is still amazed by Gigi's abilities to predict the future. She realizes that the more she helps Kenneth, the more she is hurting Hathaway. They get a hotel for the night. Of course, Kenneth doesn't sleep, but continues on working, which means Kenneth is probably watching her. Gigi takes a shower and ponders the difference between Kenneth and Hathaway. Kenneth is a gentle person with amazing leadership skills. She believes that all the luck they are having is all due to his command. She sees Hathaway as a wandering dog that is always on the move. For a moment, she reflects on the Count. They were only intimate a few times, but he was mainly burdened by business and inheritance. She never had any ill will towards him, but after a year, she could sense it couldn't be. She says that she leans towards Kenneth over Hathaway most likely because of some father complex. She is drawn to older men. Kenneth comes to her room later as she orders room service. They have some flirty banter before Gigi asks about Kimberly. She says that the Cersei unit should honor the past by finding Kimberly. She wants to go sightseeing in Ayers Rock, but Kenneth wonders if it has anything to do with the old commander. Kenneth loans her a Casaria to go to Ayers Rock while he continues forward towards Adelaide. He kisses her on the forehead and tells her to get some rest before leaving the room. Bright tells Mirai that he has to head to Earth the day after tomorrow. They were planning on checking out a shop in New Hampshire that day. Shouldn't it be New Hampshire? He submitted his resignation letter 6 months ago, but the Federation won't accept it, claiming that he is the only captain with combat experience on Earth. Bright thought of a career in politics, but after Char's rebellion, he is just waiting out the minimum requirements for his pension so he could get that Federation money and retire. They said they will allow him to retire after this mission. Also, Bright was a teenager when he joined the military and is now only in his mid-40s. He is still young, but with the battle scars of an older man and is starting to show in his face. But god damn it, we have the return of Mustache Bright. It is glorious. He and Mirai are looking at buildings so they could eventually open a restaurant. The story will ultimately be the last time we see Bright. So if you ever wondered what Bright ended up doing post UC 105, He most likely lived out a quiet life running a restaurant with Chaemin and Mirai. However, he leaves the door open for politics and even daydreams of being the next Zeon Daikun. He informs Reagan Hamset, who is the second in command on the Rock High Loom, about his departure for Earth. He tells Mirai that he is helping the Cersei unit and it should be a straightforward mission. Mirai says that maybe she could see Hathaway while on Earth. Mirai kisses him on the cheek as he goes to his day shift. She smiles but feels uneasy. Lane and the mobile suit team preps for Adelaide, while Gigi heads to Ayers Rock with the Casaria team. Lane says that involving her is the epitome of idiocy. He thinks that Kenneth has gone mad. He also refers to everyone around him as adults, like Amado or Camille, so I assume he is young, but unsure. Kenneth says that there is certainly, absolutely, without a doubt, no way that Mafty is in Ayers Rock. We jump to Mafty in Ayers Rock. They get an alert that Gustav Karls are nearby, and they instantly run into action. They find out that it is only one base jabber with 2 Gustav Karls. The team heads south while Hathaway handles the enemy with the Gundam. The Gustav Karls split off from the Casaria. One unit goes around the mountain while Hathaway cuts him off in the opposite direction. He takes out one of the mobile suits with his beam saber and kicks another one, causing the mobile suit's reactor to go off. He then gets on top of the Casaria and demands that they land. The Casaria crew is like, yeah, a reactor just went off and we aren't in normal suits. Can we move like 5 miles away? That is when Hathaway hears Gigi's voice. He can't believe it is in fact her. She wants him to take her as a prisoner. He takes her and leaves the Cersei crew alive. He does destroy their base jabber, however. Hathaway takes off with his new prisoner. He is happy to see her. He tells her that he wants to be with her forever. She catches him off guard by saying that is a lie. They won't be together forever. Remember, her prophecies are usually always right. She ultimately tells him that she is literally stuck between him and Kenneth. He wondered if she was a spy for Kenneth, but she seemed too sincere for that. The two fly off into the distance in awkward silence, and their positions are misaligned. And that will conclude Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway's Flash Volume 2. If you haven't figured it out, this is a very human story about 3 depressed individuals. It's also the culmination of the political intrigue we've built over the years on this channel. If you're looking for mobile suits going boom, this isn't the place. However, this book was mainly people talking to one another. I am wondering what they are going to change to make this more visually appealing for the movie. Next time, we will finish the Mafty arc with Hathaway's Flash Volume 3. Where we will see the attack on Adelaide take place. But that will do it for now, new types. Remember, if your book ends with awkward silence as you ride off in the distance, it's not looking good. Peace.